What's up guys, today we're going to be going over my first stream build this season, and this build literally suspends everything in the game and is really crazy. So in this video we'll be breaking down everything you need to know about the Titan Strand subclass and making what I think is the coolest and best build you can. So starting off with the subclass, we're obviously going to be on Titan and Strand, and the first thing to note that is important will be our grenade. Using the Shackle Grenade, a thrown weapon of weighted strand matter that detonates on impact, suspending targets and creating additional suspending sub-projectiles. And looking at the way this works, it's pretty straightforward. Throw the grenade and it will suspend all the targets nearby, kind of like a dusk-filled grenade radius on stasis, but now with suspending, which just lifts them into the air and makes it so they can't move or shoot or do anything. Then the two aspects we have into the fray. This one's all about Woven Mail. Destroying a Tangle or casting your super will give you Woven Mail, which just means an increase to damage reduction. And while you have Woven Mail, your melee will regen faster. But the more important aspect for this build is this one right here. Activate your class ability to create a ripple in reality that travels forward along the ground, suspending and damaging targets it hits. And this is going to be the main thing we make our build around. So looking at how this works, using our barricade, we'll send out a very long energy that will suspend targets it hits, and this along with the grenade are going to be the two things at the core of this build. And we can improve the aspect with the new exotic boots, where it will now spawn 2 additional projectiles, tracks targets more aggressively and travels further, and you gain woven metal when suspending targets. Also, it's important to note that using the rally barricade will be a slightly faster cooldown on your barricade compared to the towering one, at 38 compared to 48 seconds, which will be a lot when we combo in all the different ways we'll be getting our ability back with this build. So now with these boots on, you send out 3 projectiles, and they not only cover more ground because of a wider radius, they also track more aggressively, making it easier to hit, and in general, anything that is in front of you when you use your barricade will be hit and suspended. Now for the first fragment, arguably the most important one, Thread of Mind. Defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy, and as you've seen throughout a few of the clips in the video so far, you can get back your barricade just with this alone extremely fast. And I did find that depending on what type of enemy you suspend and kill, you get more of the class ability back. So with a minor, it might take 4 or 5, but with a major, it's a good like 50% of it back instantly. So with just the exotic boots in this fragment alone, as long as you can kill everything you suspend, you should basically get your rally barricade back instantly, and it'll be an infinite combo. And obviously having tier 10 resilience will help out all of your recharge rates, so definitely try to make that. The next fragment I use is this one right here. Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects applied to targets have increased duration. And looking at what that does to the suspending effect, without it, it's going to suspend the target for roughly 7.7 seconds. Then I did it with the fragment on, and it barely went up to just over 8 seconds, which isn't that big of an increase. But with how many things we'll be suspending in this build, and we'll be taking advantage of the Unraveling 2 later on in this build, I still think it's worth using this fragment, because over suspending like hundreds of enemies, that slight increase does start to really add up. Next fragment is Thread of Wisdom. Defeating suspended targets with precision final blows creates an orb of power. Pretty straightforward, which will feed into our armor charge build later in this video. And the final fragment slot is kind of a freebie. If there's one that you like, go ahead and use it. I use the Thread of Ascent, where activating your grenade ability reloads your equipped weapon and grants bonus AE and handling for a short duration. Another one I swapped to is Thread of Evolution, to make threadlings travel further and deal additional damage, which I'll show off later in this video. The reason I like the Ascent a lot is because not only does it automatically reload your weapon when you use your grenade, basically making every weapon into demolitionist, but what the fragment does that doesn't say in the description is it also increases your reload speed for the entire 15 seconds of the buff, which is very good. Now moving on to our mods. So on our helmet, there's not too much really good options to use for this build. Your grenade can get final blows, which is why I have double ashes to assets, but if you want to use ammo finders, you can. Now I have a Strand Siphon or whatever primary you're using. Then on our gauntlets, once again, The grenade can get final blows, which is why firepower and bolstering detonation. If you want to use a loader, you can. But the important mod here is grenade kickstart. Then in our chest piece, I have charged up. Then one reserve perk. Then on our boots, we have stacks on stacks, along with innervation and the insulation. And finally, on our mark, we have bomber, distribution, and utility kickstart. And one thing to note is right now the Reaper mod is disabled, but once that is re-enabled, I will definitely be using that plus possibly dynamo on my helmet. So maybe a slightly updated version of this build down the road. Now with all these mods on, basically the way the build works is you go around suspending targets with your barricade or grenade. Every time you do so, you'll create at least 2 orbs. Picking those up will give you 4 armor charges. With those 4 armor charges, when you throw your grenade or use your barricade, you'll get about 50% of it back instantly and just constantly feed one into the other. And before you know it, everything will be just constantly suspended and nothing will be able to play the game, shoot you, move around, or anything. Now moving on to the finishing touches for the build with the artifact, there's going to be 3 really good mods. The first one being Allied Unraveling. Rapid final blows with a strand weapon grant your weapon unraveling rounds with a longer duration near allies. So the way unraveling works is it's kind of like Strain's version of volatile rounds, but think of the Nano Knight swarms from the Outbreak Perfected, and that is really what they look like. They're really cool and really good. And the next artifact mod is Untangler. Destroying a tangle with a strain weapon suspends targets damaged by the explosion. And if we combo that with the top right one right here, the Threaded Blast, destroying a tangle with a strain weapon creates a larger and more damaging explosion. And these two go together so well. So now the explosion of the tangle will not only do more damage, but be in a much larger radius. And because of that, a much larger radius of suspending also, which just further builds into our build that we have. And for all of these artifact mods to work, we need a strain weapon, which you can farm from the new event on Neomuna. And I have the SMG with the new perk Hatchling, which is kind of like Headstone, but for Strand, where precision final blows will create a threadling at the target's location. So now looking at all the different things we introduced to this build, first, the tangles are now extremely powerful and worth shooting because of how large the radius is and how much damage they do. And they suspend, which just further feeds into all the different things we have with our subclass and mods. And the other one is the threadlings from precision final blows with our SMG, which, as mentioned, is kind of like the equivalent of Headstone or Dragonfly for Strand. Really powerful and really good. And that is where the fragment of increasing the threadling damage comes into play. If you want to run that for that effect alone, it's definitely worth it. But overall, proccing the Hatchling perk is going to be super easy with everything being suspended and not being able to move. And that will also help us create the orbs from the precision final blows. So once again, everything's just kind of coming together and working really well. And finishing out the weapons for this build, really whatever special you want. I've been using this new fusion rifle with this really cool roll, which I'll probably make a video on down the road, along with the winter bite because it's new. I might be making a video on that tomorrow. And sometimes I swap over to the threadling grenade to get more threadlings and add more damage to this build, along with this fragment to increase the damage and how far they travel. But overall, that is the full build. Once again, just mousing over everything in it. This build is really good and just suspends everything in the game. And I've been using this a lot the past day when we're doing all of our powerfuls and pinnacles and things like that and different activities. And when you get into the end game, the thing about suspending is it's really a support ability when it comes down to it, because it does a little bit of damage when they get suspended, but not a lot, right? And once they're suspended, you still got to kill them, right? And when you think about it in that way, where you're kind of just making it so nothing can move or really play the game, and with your entire team doing damage to them to kill them, it really works out and is a really good support build overall. And that is kind of like the issue with Strain, I think, once you get to harder content, is a lot of the different abilities really don't do damage. They don't debuff the target, they don't buff you. So yeah, I'm not quite sure about how Strain transitions into the in-game yet. I'm not sure if it can hold its own. But with that being said, this build is still incredibly fun and suspends everything in the game. The rest of the video will just be some gameplay from the Battleground playlist. Like usual, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.